3 days passed before the woman finally opened her eyes. Jake had barely slept during that time, checking on both of them every few hours. He'd been worried sick that she might not wake up at all. When she did wake up, it was the strangest thing Jake had ever experienced. He was sitting in his kitchen, drinking his morning coffee, and trying to figure out how to call in sick to work again, when he suddenly heard a voice in his head, and not with his ears. Inside his mind, where am I? Hey. Jake nearly dropped his coffee cup. He looked around his empty kitchen, then rushed to the living room. The woman was sitting up on his couch, looking around with those same beautiful ocean-colored eyes as the child. Did you just ... double quotes, Jake started to ask, then stopped. Felt crazy even thinking it. The woman tilted her head and looked at him with curiosity. Then that voice came in his head again. You saved us. Why? Jake sat down slowly in his old armchair. You can talk to me without speaking? She nodded, then said out loud in a voice. Like music, I can learn your words too. I see them in your mind. Over the next few hours, Jake learned that her name was something he couldn't pronounce. So she told him to call her Luna. The child's name was also too difficult for human tongues. So Luna suggested calling the little one Star, Luna explained. In a mixture of words and thoughts, that they had come from very far away. Their homeworld was dying, and she had been trying to find a safe place for her and Star to live. But something had gone wrong with their ship during the long journey. We are the last, she told Jake sadly. My people, we are gone now. Jake felt his heart break a little when she said that. He had lost people to his parents, some friends from the army, his marriage. But to lose everyone, an entire world of people, he couldn't imagine how lonely that must feel. Star, as it turned out, was curious about everything. Once the little one felt better, Jake's quiet cabin turned into something completely different. Star wanted to touch and examine every single thing in the house. The child was fascinated by Jake's old television. When Jake turned it on, Star's eyes went wide with amazement. But then something weird happened. The channels started changing by themselves, flipping through stations like someone was pressing the remote control really fast. Star can make electrical things work differently, Luna explained when she saw Jake's confused face. It is natural for our kind. Jake learned to hide the remote control after Star accidentally made his TV show 3 different channels at the same time. The child also loved Jake's old dog Buddy, who had been his only company for the past 2 years. Buddy was getting old and moved slowly, but around Star, the dog seemed to become young again. They would play together in Jake's backyard, and Jake swore he could see them communicating somehow without making any sounds. Star speaks to the animal's mind, Luna told him. All living things have thoughts. Your people just forgot how to hear them. Living with Luna and Star changed everything about Jake's daily routine. He had to learn what they could eat. Regular human food made them sick, but they loved fruits and vegetables. Luna showed him which plants in the desert they could gather. That would help them stay healthy. Jake also had to be very careful about his job. He called in sick for a whole week, telling his boss he had the flu. But he couldn't stay away from work forever without people getting suspicious. Luna understood. The problem? Your kind would fear us, she said. They would want to study us, perhaps hurt us. So they worked together to figure out how to hide Luna and Star's true nature. Luna could control her skin's glow, making it look almost normal in regular light. Star was harder to disguise because the child forgot to control the glow when excited, which was most of the time. Jake bought thick curtains for all his windows and told his neighbors, few he had way up in the mountains, that he was doing some home repairs and would be keeping to himself for a while. The hardest part was going back to work. Jake had never been good at lying, and now he was keeping the biggest secret in human history. Every time his coworkers asked why he'd been out sick so long, Jake felt like they could see right through him, but Luna helped with that too. She somehow made him calmer, more confident. When he asked her how, she smiled and touched his forehead gently. I share some of my strength with you, she said. We are connected now, you and I. You saved our lives, so part of our life belongs to you. Jake didn't completely understand what that meant, but he started noticing changes in himself. His hearing became sharper. He could see better in the dark. Sometimes he would know things before they happened, like when his boss was about to call him into the office. The months that followed were the happiest Jake had been in years. His cabin, which had been so quiet and lonely before, was now full of laughter and wonder. Star was learning English quickly and loved to ask Jake questions about everything. Why does water fall from the sky? Star would ask about rain. How do the lights in the wall work? About electricity. Why do you put dead plants in the ground? About gardening. Jake found himself seeing his own world through Star's eyes, and it made everything seem new and amazing again. Luna was different from anyone Jake had ever known. She was incredibly smart. She understood how his radio equipment worked better than he did after just looking at it once. She could fix his old truck engine without tools, just by touching it and somehow knowing what was wrong. But she was also gentle and kind in ways that made Jake's heart ache. She would sit with Buddy when the old dog was tired, and Jake would see the dog's pain fade away under her touch. She helped Jake's small garden grow better than it ever had before, and she listened to Jake talk about his life, his time in the army, his failed marriage, his loneliness without judging him. She shared her own stories too, about her world and her people, about the beautiful cities and peaceful forests that were now gone forever. I thought I would always be alone, Luna told him one evening as they sat on his porch, watching Star play with Buddy in the yard. But you have given us a home. You have given us family. Jake looked at her glowing softly in the evening light and realized that he had found something he didn't even know he was looking for. These weren't just refugees he was helping anymore. They were his family now. Star ran over to them, excited about a butterfly that had landed on the child's hand. The butterfly's wings seemed to sparkle with extra colors around Star. Jake, Star said in perfect English, are you our dad now? The question hit Jake like a punch to the chest. He looked at Luna, who was smiling at him with those ocean eyes. If you want to be, she said softly. Jake picked up Star and held the child close. Yes, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I guess I am. That night, as Jake tucked Star into the small bed he'd built in what used to be his storage room, the child looked up at him seriously. I'm glad our ship broke, Star whispered, because now we found you. Jake kissed the child's forehead and turned off the lights. As he walked back to the living room, where Luna was reading one of his old books, Jake realized that the crash that had brought them together hadn't been an accident. It had been the best thing that ever happened to him. It was past midnight when Jake drove his old pickup truck down the empty desert highway. He worked the night shift at the big radio tower station outside Las Vegas. And this drive home was always the same, dark, quiet, and boring. The desert. Stretched out on both sides like a black ocean, Jake had been doing this job for 3 years now. He checked the big satellite dishes, made sure all the equipment was working, and wrote reports that nobody probably ever read. It wasn't exciting work, but it paid the bills and let him live alone in his small cabin up in the mountains. That night started like any other. Jake was thinking about what he'd make for breakfast when he got home. Maybe some eggs and toast. Simple stuff. He wasn't much of a cook since his wife left him 2 years ago. She said he was too boring, always working nights, never wanting to go out and have fun. Then the sky lit up like someone had turned on a giant flashlight. Bright. A streak of light shot across the darkness above him. At first, Jake thought it was just a shooting star. He'd seen plenty of those during his desert drives. But this one was different. It was bigger, brighter, and it seemed to be getting closer instead of disappearing. The light got so bright that Jake had to squint his eyes. He pulled over to the side of the road and watched through his windshield. The streak of light was heading straight down toward the ground somewhere ahead of him. Then came the crash. Even from miles away, Jake felt the ground shake under his truck. The sound was like thunder, but deeper and longer. It rolled across the desert and made his teeth vibrate. His truck windows rattled in their frames. Jake sat there for a minute, trying to figure out what he'd just seen. Maybe it was a plane crash. Maybe it was a military test that went wrong. The government was always doing secret stuff out here in the desert. He knew he should probably just drive home and call it in to the police. Let them deal with whatever had happened. That would be the smart thing to do. It's a safe thing. But something made him curious. Maybe it was because his life had been so boring lately. Maybe it was because he'd been a soldier once before he got this job. The soldiers don't just walk away when something might be wrong. Jake turned his truck around and drove toward where he thought the light had come down. He had to leave the main road and drive on dirt tracks that were barely wide enough for his truck. The desert was full of rocks and small hills, and his headlights made strange shadows that jumped and moved as he drove. It took him almost an hour to find the right spot. When he did, he couldn't believe what he was looking at. There was a hole in the ground about as wide as a swimming pool. The dirt around it was still smoking, and Jake could smell something burning. Yeah, but it wasn't the smell of a plane crash or anything normal. It was sweet and sharp at the same time, like flowers mixed with electricity. Jake parked his truck and grabbed his flashlight from the glove box. He also took the first aid kit he always carried, old habits from his army days. He walked slowly to the edge of the hole and shined his light down into it. What he saw made him stop breathing for a second. It wasn't a plane. It wasn't anything made by humans. The thing at the bottom of the hole looked like it was made of some kind of metal that seemed to change color in his flashlight beam. It was smooth and curved, about the size of a small car, but shaped like nothing he'd ever seen before. There were no wings, no wheels, no windows that he could see, and it was cracked open like an egg. Jake knew he should run, every smart part of his brain was telling him to get back in his truck and drive away as fast as he could. This was way beyond anything he could handle. This was something the government needed to know about. But then he heard it. A sound that made him forget about being scared. It was crying. Soft, weak crying, like a child who was hurt and scared. Jake had heard that sound before, in places where wars had happened. He'd never been able to walk away from it then, and he couldn't walk away from it now. He found a way to climb down into the hole. The dirt was soft and warm, warmer than it should have been in the cool desert night. As he got closer to the strange craft, his flashlight showed him an opening in its side. Inside, he found them. The woman was unconscious, lying on her side. She looked almost human, but her skin had a soft glow to it, like she had light coming from inside her body. Her hair was long and dark, but when Jake's flashlight hit it, it seemed to have silver threads running through it. Next to her was a small child, maybe 4 or 5 years old. The child had the same glowing skin and was making the crying sounds Jake had heard. The child's eyes were closed, but there were tears on its cheeks. Both of them were hurt. Jake could see cuts and bruises, and they were both bleeding. But their blood wasn't quite the right color. It was darker than human blood, almost purple. Jake knelt down next to them and gently touched the woman's wrist, trying to find a pulse. Her skin was warm, warmer than a human should be, and her pulse was faster than normal. But she was alive. The child opened its eyes when Jake touched its arm. The eyes were bigger than human eyes, and they were the most beautiful color Jake had ever seen, like looking at the ocean on a perfect day. The child looked at Jake with those amazing eyes and whispered something in a language he didn't understand. But somehow, Jake knew what it meant. The child was asking for help. Made a decision that would change his life forever. He couldn't leave them here. Couldn't call the police or the government. He'd seen what happened to strange things in the desert. They disappeared, and nobody ever talked about them again. These weren't things. They were people. Different people, but people all the same. And they needed help. Very carefully, Jake lifted the child first. It was lighter than a human child should be, and its skin felt like touching warm silk. Then he went back for the woman. She was harder to carry, but Jake had carried wounded soldiers before. He knew how to be gentle but quick. He managed to get both of them up out of the hole and into the back of his truck. He made a bed for them with some old blankets he kept behind the seats. The child curled up next to the woman, and Jake could see that they belonged together, family, as he drove away from the crash site. Jake kept looking in his rearview mirror at his strange passengers. The woman's glow was getting dimmer, which worried him. He needed to get them somewhere safe, somewhere he could try to help them. His cabin was perfect for this. It was miles from the nearest neighbor, hidden in the mountains, and stocked with medical supplies from his army days. If these people were going to recover, they'd need time and privacy. Jake drove through the rest of the night, taking back roads and avoiding any other cars. As the sun started to come up behind the mountains, he pulled into his driveway. He carried his mysterious passengers inside and laid them on his couch. In the daylight coming through his windows, he could see then more clearly. They were definitely not human, but they were beautiful in a way that made his heart ache. Jake spent the rest of that day cleaning their wounds and trying to make them comfortable. He gave them water and tried to get them to eat small amounts. Of food, the child seemed to recover faster, but the woman stayed unconscious. As night fell again, Jake sat in his kitchen and tried to understand what he'd gotten himself into. He'd found two beings from somewhere else, somewhere not Earth. They'd crashed in the desert, and now they were in his house. His boring, quiet life was over. Everything was about to change. And deep down, even though he was scared and confused, Jake realized he was glad. For the first time in years, he felt like he was doing something that mattered. He was saving lives. He was protecting people who couldn't protect themselves, even if those people weren't from his world. A year had passed since that night in the desert changed Jake's life forever. What started as helping to crash survivors had become something he never expected, a real family. Jake's cabin in the mountains had transformed completely. The once quiet and lonely place now buzzed with life and laughter. Star had grown taller and stronger, and the child's English was now perfect. More than that, Star had started showing new abilities that amazed Jake every day. Just last week, Star had made all the lights in the house dance to music by just thinking about it. The child could also sense when storms were coming days before the weather reports mentioned them. Sometimes Star would get a distant look and say things like, "Jake, someone's going to call you in 5 minutes," and the phone would ring exactly when predicted. But it was Luna who had truly captured Jake's heart. At first, Jake told himself he was just being a good person, helping refugees from another world. Then he convinced himself he was just enjoying having company after being alone for so long. But as the months passed, he couldn't deny the truth anymore, was falling in love with Luna. It had happened slowly, like sunrise creeping over the mountains. It started with simple moments, the way Luna would hum strange, beautiful songs while cooking dinner, or how she would sit with old Buddy and somehow make the dog's arthritis pain disappear. Jake found himself looking forward to coming home from work just to see her smile. Luna was unlike anyone Jake had ever known. She was brilliant. She could understand complex things in minutes that would take Jake hours to figure out. She had fixed his old truck's engine just by touching it and somehow knowing exactly what was wrong. She could make his small vegetable garden produce twice as much food as it ever had before. But beyond her amazing abilities, Luna was kind and patient and funny. She laughed at Jake's terrible jokes and listened to his stories about his army days without getting bored. She helped him see beauty in ordinary things he'd never noticed before. One evening in late spring, Jake was sitting on his porch watching Luna and Star play in the yard. They were practicing what Luna called light dancing, making patterns of soft, colorful light appear in the air around them. Star would giggle every time the lights formed shapes like butterflies or flowers. Luna caught Jake watching them and walked over to sit beside him on the old wooden bench he'd built years ago. "You look troubled," she said, her voice carrying that musical quality that always made Jake's heart skip a beat. "Not troubled," Jake said quietly. "Just thinking about us." Jake nodded. He'd been wrestling with his feelings for weeks now, unsure if what he felt was appropriate or even possible. Luna wasn't human. It came from completely different worlds, literally. Luna was quiet for a moment. Then she did something she'd never done before. She took Jake's hand in hers. Her skin was always warm, warmer than human skin, and touching her sent a gentle tingling sensation up Jake's arm. But this time was different. This time, Jake felt something deeper, a connection that seemed to reach right into his soul. "Jake," Luna said softly, "my people believe that hearts recognize each other across any distance, even between different worlds. What you feel, I feel too." Jake turned to look at her, hardly daring to believe what he was hearing.
Ow.
In the evening light, Luna's skin had that soft glow that made her look like something from a dream. "I know we're different," Jake said. "I know, this probably seems crazy." Luna smiled and placed her free hand gently on Jake's cheek. "Love is never crazy. Love is the one thing that's the same everywhere in the universe." That night, for the first time, Jake and Luna talked about their feelings openly. Luna explained that her people didn't love the same way humans did. They formed deeper connections that lasted much longer. When my people choose someone to love, Luna said, it's not just for this lifetime. It's a bond that connects our very essence. Jake asked what had happened to Star's father, and Luna's expression grew sad. He was a good person, but he died in the war that destroyed our world. Star doesn't remember him, much too young when it happened. But Star has been hoping for a new father figure for a long time. Over the following weeks, Jake and Luna grew closer. They would take long walks in the mountains together, while Star played with Buddy or practiced making the wildflowers bloom brighter. Luna showed Jake how to see things the way her people did, not just with eyes but with feelings and intuition. Jake discovered he was changing in small ways. His senses were sharper than they'd ever been. He could hear Star calling from much farther away than should be possible. He could sense Luna's emotions even when she was in a different room. Sometimes he would know things without understanding how he knew them. It's because we're bonding, Luna explained, when Jake asked about these changes. When two people truly love each other, they start to share parts of themselves. The most amazing change came one night when Jake was having a nightmare about his time in the army. He woke up gasping, his heart racing from memories of explosions and fear. But instead of being alone with the terror, like always before, he felt Luna's presence in his mind. Without even getting out of bed, she somehow shared her calmness with him. The nightmare faded, replaced by images of peaceful places from her. Homeworld crystal cities and silver forests under purple skies? How did you do that? Jake asked the next morning. We're becoming connected, Luna said simply. Your pain is my pain now. Your peace is my peace. Jake realized this was what real love felt like. Not just caring about someone, but actually sharing life with them on the deepest possible level. Star noticed the growing bond between Jake and Luna and seemed delighted by it. The child started calling Jake Dad more often and began asking when they were going to have a bonding ceremony. What's a bonding ceremony? Jake asked Luna. Luna blushed, her skin glowing brighter pink than usual. It's how my people make their love official. Like your marriage ceremonies, but deeper. Jake felt his heart race. Are you asking me to marry you? Luna looked nervous for the first time since Jake had known her. I know it might seem too fast, or too strange. We're from different worlds. ... Double quotes. Jake didn't let her finish. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her, feeling that warm tingling. Sensation spread through his entire body. Luna, he said, when they broke apart, I don't care what world you're from. I love you. I love Star. I want us to be a real family. That evening, the three of them sat together on the porch as the sun set behind the mountains. Star was curled up between Jake and Luna, and Buddy was sleeping at their feet. So we're really going to be a forever family? Star asked sleepily. Forever and always, Jake promised, wrapping his arms around both Luna and Star. As the stars came out in the clear mountain sky, Jake marveled at how much his life had changed. A year ago, he'd been a lonely man going through the motions of living. Now he had a family that filled his heart with more joy than he'd ever thought possible. The love he shared with Luna was unlike anything he'd experienced before. It was deeper than attraction, stronger than affection. It was like they were two parts of the same soul that had finally found each other, and looking up at the stars. That night, Jake realized that love truly was universal. It could bridge any gap, even the space between worlds. 2 years had passed since Jake found Luna and Star in that desert crater. Their little family had settled into a comfortable routine that felt as natural as breathing. Jake went to work at the radio station. Luna took care of their mountain home with skills that seemed almost magical, and Star grew stronger and smarter every day. Jake had learned to love their quiet life together. Every morning, he would wake up to the smell of Luna's cooking she had mastered making. Human food, but always added special touches that made everything taste better than anything Jake had ever eaten. Star would chatter excitedly about dreams, filled with colors that didn't exist on Earth, and Luna would listen with the patience of someone who truly understood childhood wonder. Their evenings were Jake's favorite time. After dinner, they would sit together on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple. Star would practice making small lights dance in the air, while Luna and Jake talked about everything and nothing. But on one particular spring evening, everything changed. Star had gone to bed early, tired from a day of exploring the forest behind their cabin. The child had been discovering new abilities yesterday. Star had somehow made every flower in a meadow bloom at exactly the same time. Luna said this was normal development for their people, but Jake still found it amazing. To watch, Jake and Luna were sitting on their usual spot on the porch when Luna suddenly became very quiet. She had been unusually thoughtful all week, and Jake had noticed her staring up at the stars more often than usual. "Jake," Luna said softly, her voice carrying a tone he'd never heard before. "I need to talk to you about something important." Jake felt his stomach tighten. In his experience, conversations that started like that never went well. "What's wrong? Are you sick? Is Star okay?" Luna took his hand in hers, and Jake felt that familiar warm tingling that always happened when they touched.
Oh.
But tonight, it felt different, more intense, more meaningful. "We're both fine," Luna said. "But I've been thinking about our future. About what it means that Star and I are the last of our people." Jake had thought about this too, though he tried not to dwell on it. The idea that Luna and Star were the only survivors from their entire world was heartbreaking. Sometimes he would catch Luna looking sad and distant, and he knew she was thinking about everyone she had lost. "I know it must be hard," Jake said gently. "But you have us now. You have a family." Luna smiled, but there was something serious in her ocean-colored eyes. "That's exactly what I want to talk about." "Jake, what if our family could be bigger?" Jake wasn't sure what she meant. "You want to find other survivors? Are there others out there?" Luna shook her head. "No, there are no others. Star and I are truly alone." She paused, looking nervous in a way Jake had never seen before. "But there could be new life. Yes. There could be children who carry on something of my people." The meaning of her words hit Jake like a thunderbolt. His heart started beating faster, and he felt like he couldn't breathe properly. "Luna," he said carefully, "are you saying what I think you're saying?" Luna's skin began to glow brighter, which Jake had learned happened when she was feeling strong emotions. "I'm asking if you would want to have a child with me, a baby who would be part human and part of my people." Jake stared at her, his mind racing. A baby, their baby. The idea was both wonderful and terrifying at the same time. "Is that even possible?" he asked. "We're from different worlds, different species." Luna nodded.
How my people have the ability to adapt.
"We can make our biology compatible with other intelligent species. It's rare, but it can be done. Would be unique, carrying the best traits from both of our kinds." Jake tried to process what she was telling him. A child who was part human, part alien. What would that even mean? What kind of life could such a child have? "The baby would have abilities like Star's?" Jake asked. "Probably stronger abilities," Luna said. "Human creativity combined with our natural gifts could create something amazing." "But Jake, this isn't just about creating life. For my people, having a child together means something deeper than humans understand." Luna explained that for her species, reproduction was about more than just biology. It was about choosing to blend to souls permanently, to create a bond that would last beyond one lifetime. "If we do this," Luna said, "we become connected in ways that your people don't have words for. Your thoughts, your feelings, your very essence becomes part of mine, and mine becomes part of yours." The weight of what she was asking hit Jake fully. This wasn't just about having a baby. It was about transforming into something new, something that had never existed before. Jake's mind filled with questions and worries. How would they raise a child who was half human, half alien? Us. What if the baby had abilities that were too powerful to control? What if someone discovered their secret? What kind of future could they offer a child who would never fit completely into either world? But as he looked at Luna's hopeful face, Jake realized he was also feeling something else. Excitement. The idea of having a child with Luna, of creating new life together, filled him with a joy he hadn't expected. "What does Star think about this?" Jake asked. Luna smiled. "Star has been hoping for a little brother or sister for months. Yesterday, Star asked me when you two were going to give our family a baby." Jake laughed despite his nervousness. "Star, always seemed to know things before the adults figured them out. I need time to think about this, Jake said honestly. It's a lot to process. Luna squeezed his hand. Of course, this decision will change everything for all of us. But Jake, I want you to know that I'm not asking because I think we have to continue my species. I'm asking because I love you completely, and I want to create new life with the person who saved mine. Over the next few days, Jake couldn't think about anything else. At work, he found himself staring at the radio equipment without really seeing it. At home, he watched Star play and wondered what it would be like to have a baby with similar abilities. The more Jake thought about it, the more he realized his fears weren't really about the practical challenges. They were about whether he deserved this kind of happiness. His whole life, he'd felt like he was meant to be alone. His marriage had failed, he'd never had children, and he'd convinced himself he wasn't father material. But watching how much Star loved him, seeing how Luna looked at him like he was the most important person in the universe, Jake began to understand that maybe he'd been wrong about himself. One evening, while Luna was helping Star with homework and Jake was washing dishes, he overheard them talking.
Mom.
Star said, "If you and Jake have a baby, will you still love me the same?" Luna pulled Star into a hug. Star love doesn't get smaller when it gets shared. It gets bigger. If we have a baby, I'll love you just as much, and Jake will love you just as much, and you'll have a little sibling to love too. Good, Star said with satisfaction, 'cause I've been practicing. Being a big brother, I want to teach the baby how to make flowers grow and how to talk to animals. Jake smiled as he listened to them. Star was already planning to be the best big sibling possible. That night, after Star was asleep, Jake sat on the edge of his bed and thought about his decision. He thought about his lonely life before Luna, and Star crashed into it. He thought about how much joy they had brought him. He thought about the possibility of a child who would carry the best of both worlds. Most importantly, he thought about Luna and how much he loved her. She had asked him to share in creating something miraculous, something that would be a living symbol of their love. Jake made his choice. The next morning, he found Luna in their garden, tending to vegetables that grew better under her care than they ever had for Jake alone. "Luna," he said, his voice steady with certainty. "Yes." She looked up at him, hope shining in her eyes. Yes, I want to have a child with you. I want our family to grow. I want to create something beautiful together." Luna stood up and walked to him, her skin glowing brighter than he'd ever seen it. When she kissed him, Jake felt that warm, tingling sensation spread through his entire body, but this time it felt like a promise. "Are you sure?" Luna whispered against his lips. Jake wrapped his arms around her and held her tight. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." From inside the house, they heard Star cheer loudly. The child had apparently been listening. From the window. Finally, Star called out.
"Oh."
Jake laughed and pulled Luna closer. Their family was about to become something unprecedented, something that had never existed before in the history of either of their worlds, and Jake couldn't wait to see what kind of miracle they would create together. Jake had never been so nervous in his entire life. Not during his army days, not during his job interviews, not even when he'd first found Luna and Star in that desert crater. This was different. This was about bringing new life into the world. Life that had never existed before. The process Luna had described wasn't like anything humans understood. It would take several months of preparation, during which both of them would need to undergo changes that would make their biology compatible. Luna explained it as gently as she could, but Jake could tell even she was nervous about what they were attempting. "No one from my people has ever tried this with a human before," Luna admitted as they sat in their living room, planning for what was to come. "We're creating something completely new." Star was bouncing with excitement on the couch beside them. "Can I help? I want to help make the baby." Luna laughed and ruffled Star's hair. "You can help by being patient and taking care of us while we go through the changes." The first thing Jake noticed was how his dreams changed. Instead of his usual dreams about work or memories from his past, he began dreaming in colors that didn't exist on Earth. He would wake up with visions of silver trees and purple skies, places he'd never seen but somehow felt familiar. Luna explained that their minds were beginning to connect on a deeper level. "Your consciousness is learning to understand mine," she said. Mine is learning to understand yours. Jake also began to experience physical changes. His senses became incredibly sharp. He could hear Star whispering in the next room, could smell rain coming from miles away, could see details in the darkness that would have been impossible before. Sometimes he would know things without understanding. How? Like when Luna was feeling sad even when she was smiling. Is this permanent? Jake asked one evening as they watched the sunset from their porch. Luna took his hand and Jake felt that familiar warm sensation, but now it was accompanied by actual thoughts and feelings that weren't his own. He could sense Luna's love for him, her excitement about their future child, and her lingering sadness about her lost world. "The changes will stay with you forever," Luna said softly. "We're becoming something new together, Jake. Not human, not my species, but something that combines the best of both."
Oh.
The most amazing change happened about 3 months into the process. Jake was at work when he suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of joy that wasn't his own. He could sense Luna's happiness flooding through their connection, and somehow he knew exactly what it meant. He left work early that day, driving home faster than he probably should have. He found Luna in their kitchen, her skin glowing brighter than he'd ever seen it, with Star dancing around her excitedly. "It worked," Luna said simply, her eyes sparkling with tears of happiness. "We're going to have a baby." Jake swept Luna into his arms and spun her around, both of them laughing with pure joy. Star cheered and hugged both of them, and even old Buddy seemed to sense the celebration, wagging his tail and barking happily. The pregnancy was unlike anything Jake had read about in human medical books. Luna's body changed in beautiful ways. Her skin took on new patterns of soft light, and she seemed to glow with an inner radiance that made her look like something from a fairy tale. But the most incredible part was how Jake could feel the baby developing through their connection. He could sense the tiny life growing inside Luna. He could feel the baby's first movements, could sense when the little one was sleeping or active, could even pick up on what seemed like the baby's emotions. "Is the baby healthy?" Jake asked during one of their evening walks. Luna had been teaching him to sense life the way her people did, and he was beginning to understand the complex patterns of energy that surrounded all living things. "Perfectly healthy," Luna assured him, "and strong. I think this little one is going to have abilities that surprise us all." Star was the most excited, expectant sibling Jake had ever seen. The child had taken to talking to Luna's belly every morning and evening, telling the baby about Earth and all the wonderful things they would see together. "Baby," Star would whisper, placing small hands on Luna's stomach, "when you're born, I'm going to show you how to make butterflies follow you around, how to make flowers bloom just by touching them, and how to talk to the animals in the forest." Jake would watch these moments with a heart so full of love, he sometimes felt like it might burst. This was his family, strange and wonderful and unlike anything that had ever existed before. As Luna's pregnancy progressed, Jake had to make some difficult decisions about their safety. He quit his job at the radio station, telling his boss he wanted to start his own business. Using some money he'd saved and Luna's incredible knowledge of where to find valuable minerals in the desert, they became financially independent. Jake also began preparing their home for a baby who would be unlike any other child on Earth. He built a special nursery with windows that could be completely darkened. Knowing that the baby might need to control its natural glow, he installed extra security systems around their property, making sure they would have plenty of warning if anyone came looking for them. The most challenging part was preparing for the birth itself. Luna explained that her people's births were very different from human births. They involved not just physical changes, but mental and spiritual ones as well. "When the baby is born," Luna told Jake, "all 3 of us will be connected in ways that human families aren't. We'll be able to sense the baby's needs. The baby will be able to communicate with both of us from the very beginning, and our family bond will become permanent." Jake found this idea both wonderful and overwhelming. What if I'm not ready? What if I don't know how to be a father to a child who's so different? Luna smiled and took his face in her hands. "Jake, you've already been a father to Star for 2 years. You've been patient and loving and kind. You've protected us and cared for us and made us feel safe. You're ready for this." The night their daughter was born was the most magical night of Jake's life. Luna's labor wasn't like human labor. Instead of pain, She experienced waves of light and energy that seemed to pulse through their entire home. Jake could feel everything she felt through their connection, and Star was right there with them, helping in ways that only someone with their abilities could. When their daughter finally arrived, Jake understood why Luna had said this would change everything. The baby was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. She had Luna's luminescent skin, but it was softer, more subtle than her mother's. She had Jake's facial features, but Luna's incredible eyes. And when she looked at Jake for the first time, he felt a connection snap into place that was deeper than anything he'd experienced before. "Hello, little one," Jake whispered, tears streaming down his face as he held his daughter for the first time. "I'm your dad." The baby looked up at him with eyes full of ancient wisdom and new innocence at the same time. Without making a sound, Jake somehow knew that she understood him completely. "What should we call her?" Jake asked Luna, who was glowing with exhaustion and joy. Star bounced excitedly beside the bed. "She told me her name while she was being born. She wants to be called Nova because she's like a new star being born." Luna and Jake looked at each other and smiled. "Nova," Luna said softly. "It's perfect." Over the following weeks, Jake discovered that being father to a half-human, Phalian baby was everything he'd hoped for, and nothing like he'd expected. Nova was incredibly intelligent. She seemed to understand complex ideas from the very beginning. She rarely cried, instead communicating her needs through the mental connection she shared with her family. Nova could make soft lights appear around her when she was happy, and flowers in Luna's garden would bloom brighter when the baby was nearby. When Jake held her, he could feel her curiosity about everything around her, her deep love for her family, and her sense of wonder at the world. Star was the most devoted big sibling imaginable. The child would spend hours talking to Nova, teaching her about Earth and about their family's story. Nova Star would say seriously, "You're the most special baby in the whole universe, because you're made of love from two different worlds." One evening, about a month after Nova's birth, Jake was sitting on their porch holding his daughter while Luna and Star played in the garden. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant colors, and Jake felt a peace he'd never known was possible. Nova looked up at him with those wise, loving eyes, and Jake felt her communicate something that wasn't quite words, but was perfectly clear. She was happy. She was loved, and she knew she was home. Jake looked at his incredible family, Luna, tending plants that grew better under her care, Star making light patterns in the air that made the butterflies dance, and Nova glowing softly in his arms like a little piece of captured starlight. 3 years ago, Jake had been a lonely man living a boring life, convinced he would never have the family he'd always secretly wanted. Now he was the father of the most remarkable children in the universe, and the partner of a woman who had shown him that love truly could transcend any boundary. "Thank you," Jake whispered to the stars that were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. He wasn't sure who he was thanking: fate, the universe, or maybe just the random crash that had brought his family to him.